Congressman Adam Schiff is on the line with us. He represents the 28th District of California. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Schiff, SCHIFF.house.gov, the website, Rep. Adam Schiff on Twitter. Congressman, welcome to the program. I understand you have this Equal Health Care for All Act that is kind of at the top of your mind right now. Tell us about this.
This is a bill that would treat equitable access to health care as a civil right. So very much like we treat access to jobs and access to housing. It would define equitable care. It would create a new Office of Equity and Civil Rights within the Department of Health and Human Services, and provide a right of action when people don't get equitable care. It's a sad but tragic and not surprising fact that people showing up at a hospital or clinic don't get the same care, often based on the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or other factors. And we want to make sure that we attack that problem, which has been laid so bare by the pandemic.
It seems important, if nothing else. Are you going to attach this to this reconciliation bill? Is this something you're proposing to be part of this larger legislation? And what are your thoughts on where that reconciliation bill is at now that Joe Manchin has come out and said, "No, billionaire tax, I don't think so"?
I would love to make it part of reconciliation, but that is not the plan. We are introducing this, have introduced this as a standalone bill. We've been working on it really for about a year now to get the input of the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services, the provider community. We have the support of NAACP and the National Urban League and others. This, I think, will really help attack problems of systemic racism within the healthcare system. In terms of where we are on reconciliation, I think we're going to the Rules Committee tomorrow, which means that we're going to be taking up a rule to pass a reconciliation bill. There are still some things to be worked out, but a lot of the contents of the bill have been resolved, and a lot of the focus, as you say, is on the pay-fors. I'm glad to see that a alternate minimum tax for corporations is going to be included. It sounds like that's now a consensus item, and it really should be. There's no reason why some of America's most successful companies should pay little or no tax. But the other pay-fors, like the billionaire's tax, are still a bit in question.
Yeah. You're on the January 6th commission, or on the House Select Committee that's investigating January 6th. And it seems like actually, we were talking with Robert Costa earlier on the program, and he was pointing out that there were really two attacks on the United States on January 6th. One was done by guys in suits, by and large, which was this effort to replicate the 1876 election, where Sam Tilden actually won the popular vote and won the Electoral College vote, but Rutherford Hayes ended up the president because you had 3 southern states plus Oregon that submitted dual sets of Electoral College ballots, and so they didn't hit that 50% threshold, and so it got thrown into the House of Representatives, and worked out that deal to destroy Reconstruction. And in fact, I wrote a piece for Salon back in March of 2020 saying this is exactly what they're going to do, and sure enough, it was what they did. So you've got that attack, and then you've got the physical attack on the building itself, which seems like it was Trump's plan B if Pence wouldn't go along with plan A of repeating 1876. Is your committee splitting these apart? How entangled are these?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with Mr. Costa's conclusion. Indeed, I wrote a book recently, Midnight in Washington, and described exactly this, that you had the insurrectionists in suits and ties, as I described them, and then you had those people outside attacking the Capitol, beating police officers, trying to use physical force to stop the proceedings. As the days went on after that bloody insurrection, my anger grew, most specifically at those insurrectionists in suits and ties, who even after that bloody assault were back on the House floor later that night, still trying to overturn the election. And I think the most grave threat to our country going forward is this effort now around the country to strip elections officials of their duties, give them over to partisan boards and legislatures. They seem to be determined that next time, if they couldn't find this time a Secretary of State in Georgia to come up with 11,780 votes that don't exist, that next time they'll have someone in that position who will. And this, I think, is the most egregious threat to our democracy. But our committee is making great progress. We're interviewing witnesses almost every day. Many cooperating. You tend to hear about the ones who are not cooperating. But even as to those who are not cooperating, like Steve Bannon, we're moving quickly to hold them in criminal contempt.
So what happens in 2024 if you get enough Republican-controlled states? We've got 19 states where 33 laws have been changed, and in several of those states, the laws have been changed so that basically, regardless of how the vote turns out in those states, the legislature gets to determine which, the slate of electors that go to Washington, D.C. for the Electoral College. Or they could even submit dual ones, like the 3 southern states and Oregon did back in 1876. And just that simple act could deprive the Electoral College of hitting that 270 threshold, that absolute 50% majority threshold, and instantly, essentially, if my understanding is correct, throw this into the House of Representatives, where each state gets 1 vote, and you've got 26 Republican-controlled states, and they just declare the Republican the winner, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Ted Cruz or whoever. How do we respond to that?
Well, you're absolutely right. The Republican Party around the country is trying to change the laws so that they can more easily overturn the results next time. It's part of the reason why we have to make sure that Democrats hold a majority in the House, that Kevin McCarthy never becomes Speaker. Had Kevin McCarthy been Speaker in January of this year, he would have overturned the results of the presidential election. We came close to losing our democracy. The GOP right now has become an anti-democratic cult of the former president. And as long as that's the case, they're just going to have to be beaten at the polls. There's really no alternative. And in terms of the actions you're talking about, we'll obviously litigate if a state tries to subvert the will of its people and appoint a slate that does not reflect the popular will, contrary to state law of the people of that state. But they are really jeopardizing our democracy. There may very well be another violent attack on the Capitol. If there is, it'll fail like the last one. But like a lot of democracies that have ceased to become democracies, it's not always by violent means. More often, it's by using the instruments of a democracy against itself. And that's exactly what Republicans are doing around the country right now.
Yeah. Last question here. We're talking with Chairman Adam Schiff, Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Down in Brazil, the Senate, the Brazilian Senate, has issued a 1,000-page report on Jair Bolsonaro, President Bolsonaro's failure to deal with the pandemic and the subsequent massive evil. Deborah Birx yesterday testified before Congress that she thought 130,000 Americans were dead unnecessarily because of the way that the Trump administration handled the COVID crisis. Is there any committee or commission or effort on the part of Congress to hold anybody accountable for the unnecessary deaths in America?
I think that there are several committees examining the pandemic and what went wrong so that people can be held accountable. In the Intelligence Committee, we're doing our own deep dive on what the intelligence community saw and when it saw what it did, and we want to make sure the intelligence community is well postured to be a tripwire for any future pandemic. And I think the intelligence, it's too early for us to reach a definitive conclusion, but they were among the very early agencies to sound the alarm.
Yeah.
But in terms of the former president's disastrous handling of the pandemic and the tragic loss of life, unnecessary loss of life, I don't think there's any question about that. His combination of this malignant narcissism, his hostility to science and fact, and his just overall incompetence, the divisive messages on wearing a mask and following the advice of health experts killed countless Americans. And the idea that someone like that, who resulted in so many American casualties, more than lost in Vietnam, could ever be considered for any office again in America is just astounding and cannot be allowed to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. Chairman Adam Schiff, Congressman, you're the best. Thank you so much for dropping by today. It's great talking with you.
Thank you. Great to talk to you.
Thank you. Congressman Adam Schiff, representing California's 28th and also on the House Intelligence Committee, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, in fact. We'll be back